Hello. So I'd quickly like to go over the concept of having an environment per branch. This is like a development environment more, using infrastructure as code from a team who've done this quite a bit for a few years. Now, I'm Martyn Kilbryde, so I work for a consultancy in the UK, and we do a lot of consulting for different clients. I'm also an ambassador for AWS and a community builder, and before that I worked on-prem. So infrastructure as code we're probably all quite familiar with, but the idea of just provisioning infrastructure, and you get that consistent, it's faster basically, and it's that reusability, but also just reducing errors because you're getting rid of the manual processes. Now with AWS CDK specifically, you can use programming languages for that, and for AWS CDK, which is what our preferred tool, so we're using that for provisioning specifically in AWS. Now, I don't want to get into the specific flow, like GitLab flow and so on, but it's fair to say, obviously, a lot of activity happens in the development environment. So in that development environment, you can be stepping on each other's toes, and it can get, especially when you're doing cloud native. So by using this technique, it means you can get that faster feedback from having these different isolated environments per developer, and just streamline that testing and streamline the development and just get that out, released to production quicker. Now, we've done this for about 2 years now, and we've done it across CDK, but we've also done CloudFormation, Terraform, and we've also done it across different processes and clients, and it's just increased our velocity in terms of development and testing. Now, just a very quick overview. Actually, from the main branch, you'll branch from there, and that's just going to create a whole environment for that branch. Now, when you do the pull request, it'll get merged in, that'll get destroyed. So zooming in a little bit on that, you do a branch from main, create with your ticket ID. That'll run your pipeline, and that pipeline will just do a CDK deploy. That CDK application has got specific code in it to allow it to create one per branch. The tester can then test that environment, obviously the developer's on there as well, and that gets approved. That'll create a pipeline or 2 pipelines, and one will destroy that environment completely, and one will refresh your main environment. Now, for GitHub Actions, they have one for branch delete, so you can run the destroy on a branch delete, but for others, like Azure DevOps, you cannot do that. You have to do it on a pull request or schedule a garbage collection job, which runs and deletes these branches. And overall, it just gives you this environment isolation. You've got your whole stack, as much as possible anyway, and so you might have database and so on, and it enforces them good practices, because if somebody does something manually on that environment, then it'll get overwritten. Now, naming is just something you've really got to look out for. So, for example, an exclamation mark might not work, but even an underscore, it doesn't work in CloudFormation, but a dash does. So you have to really know the limits of the tool. But you do want to make sure that the branch name is in all the resources. So if you've got 1,000 lambdas, you need to find the lambda for your branch, and make sure you tag all the resources so you can do reporting, cost analysis, etc. Now, when the destroy happens, in CDK, for example, some stuff will get retained, like databases, S3 buckets. You want to make sure you fully clean up everything at the end. And that destroy CI has got alerting on it, so if it fails, you can go and manually fix it. You've also got to watch out for resource limits in the quotas that you've got in AWS, especially around things like roles, because CDK will, by default, create your roles, so you don't actually know what's being created, and you could easily hit a limit. Now, cost is obviously a big concern if you're doing this kind of process. So if you're a serverless application, it might not matter. But if you've got a lot of database servers, for example, like quite expensive servers, this probably isn't for you. And the other thing is just making sure everyone knows. So if you've got a new developer who's trying to merge a branch, and he's creating branch A, B, C, etc., he's creating hundreds of resources in the background, that's just going to add up and cost a lot of money. So just make sure they know. But yeah, the key takeaways is just infrastructure as code. Obviously, you get that great speed and consistency. But by empowering developers with this process, it just gets rid of some bottlenecks. You just got to be really mindful of the dangers, such as cost. And if you want to look at some example code, then that QR code on the left will take you to a CDK application that's been set up in this way. And if you want to know more about D55, then feel free as well. Thank you.